3, 2, 1.
What is up, everybody? This is Drew, and
this is Brad,
and you are listening to yet another episode of the Unidentified Flying Podcast. We're on the move again. We seem to be nonstop on the move.
Dude, we're always on the move, man.
Movers and shakers, man. We are once again at the Chateau de Steve. Steve, say hello to everybody.
Hey, thanks, guys.
So let's see. First contact. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
All right. So let me see. UFPpodcast@gmail.com, at UFP Podcast on Twitter, and Unidentified Flying Podcast on Facebook.
It's almost like he's the host of a show.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting really good at this. So I'm signing off now. It's all yours. No. So any comments, suggestions, critiques, whatever, send them there. And
topics. We've had a couple people get all of us with some topics here lately, so thank you.
Yep,
keep them
definitely.
coming.
Yeah. So this episode, Brad, tell us, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, generally tell us what we're going to talk about, and then
you want to do
follow-up.
let's do. We're generally going to be talking about just we strive here at UFP to be half-assed news here in Oklahoma, explaining the unexplained.
Which is news, basically.
Yeah, and just random.
Who can explain
general
our
topics?
news?
But we're going to be talking a lot about Aubrey McClendon, but we're also just going to be talking a lot about how just things are covered here in the state, news-wise. We've talked about that a lot with like the sports, like talk radio, and
sure,
the failings of that sometimes.
Yeah, sort of, but, like the culture that exists around.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like we're just complaining all the time. Like I want to that's what we're here to do, man. Look beneath the iceberg. That's actually a comment I've gotten from somebody before. Like, hey, thank you for looking at what's beneath the iceberg. I'm like, goddamn right. That's what we do here at UFP.
You're raising the level of discourse.
Hey, if that's what it is, cool. Yeah. If people seriously listen to this and are like, hey, I hate that fucking show, and there's that one thing, they're like, you know what? What the fuck was that? What is that?
We won.
Man. We won, dude. There you go.
So that's in general what we're going to talk about on this particular episode. Maybe a little more, or we may kind of just that's basically what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. We're kind of trying to put out 2 episodes a week now. I mean, that is a loose plan.
Yeah.
Basically, like we probably will, but if there's a week where we don't be like, all up in arms, like, where the fuck's the second episode at?
If only we were at that level where we had a rabid fan base like that.
I've had someone ask me, like, did you, when we were just doing one, they're like, we didn't say, like, do an episode that weekend, and we did, like, one on Tuesday, and they're like, what, did y'all not record? Like, what was it?
Do you mean to tell me that there's a group of people that can't get enough of us?
There are, man.
Holy shit.
They just can't get enough.
I've made it. Okay, so let's do follow-up. I think most of our follow-up is going to be...
there's not a whole lot. I mean, we did the last one on the like the wind energy and technology, and
which that was like I said, that interview was all you. So
yeah. Well,
I think you did a good
recording.
job. I listened to it after the fact, and I thought it was a solid interview.
Thanks, my first one. I think I've got some critiques of myself, but
well, I mean, hey, your first,
you live, you learn. I guess
for your first foray into it, I thought you did a really good job. So
yeah. We did, talking to that guy, Daniel Wade, his Kickstarter's at 93%. It was at like barely over 50.
Yeah. I think he said he was at 55% during that interview is what he said he was
I was kind of worried.
Yeah.
What's his level that he's looking for?
He's trying to get to
$10,000.
And I think what does he have, like maybe 7 days left at this point?
I think, he's got about a week.
So
I'm so ignorant about Kickstarter. What happens if you don't reach that?
You get nothing.
He gets nothing. That's how Kickstarter works. There's other crowdfunding things like Indiegogo, I believe, is one where you can actually, I don't know if you have to set it up this way, but the possibility is there for you to not meet 100% of your goal and still get to keep what you have raised at that point. But Kickstarter, as far as I know, is if you don't get 100%, you got to get 100% or you don't get shit.
I'm just like used to. I had no idea until he said that, and I was like, "Oh, I've heard that before," but I never.
Yeah.
And so there's something like called stretch goals too, right? Like you can have additional milestones that you do different things.
Yeah, which that's if you go past, like, say he wanted 10,000, he could say, "Great, 10,000 is the project's funded. If I get to 12,000, I'll do this. I'll also make some other. I'll do some other little
douse it in
experiment.
glitter.
Yeah. Exactly.
He'll bedazzle this shit.
Yeah, I'll
All right,
bedazzle the fuck out of this thing. Yeah. So stuff like that, basically. Those are what stretch goals are. Like I actually, my experience with it personally is I crowdfunded a board game that I was always interested in playing, and it was like out of print, and one of their stretch goals were like, we want to get to here and we'll reprint the game.
Yeah, what was the name of that game again?
Among the Stars.
Did you ever play it?
I have not played it yet. I just can't get the people together to play it.
How many people?
I believe it's 4 to 8 people. And it's a long game. It's it's one of those.
You're playing Risk.
Well, you're not playing Risk. It's not that long, but
Okay.
plus it's got a lot of rules. Like it's not just like, hey, let's just roll this out and play it. It's really easy. You gotta, like, you're building a space station is basically what every player is doing.
Oh, okay.
So it's a cool game. I haven't put a lot of effort recently into trying to get a game together of it. But either way, one of their stretch goals was, hey, if we want this, like, I think it was $15,000 they wanted, and we'll reprint the game. And I think it was like, if we get to 20 grand, we'll also reprint one of these expansions that we had for the game. So they hit that stretch goal, so they reprinted it too. And then they had another expansion that they had previously released that if they got to another stretch goal, they would do it too. So stuff like that. So that was a quick crash course in
Yeah, we're diving down the rabbit hole in that one.
Yeah, so, okay.
But basically, yeah, I mean, if we get another episode in before the deadline finishes, go check it out.
Yeah, and I have a feeling now at this point he'll get funded. I mean,
I hope so. Yeah, I hope for science, man.
Yeah,
come on, progress.
That
I was in Oklahoma. I was like, that's pretty cool, man. I just
and again, thanks to him for doing the interview. He seemed really passionate about the project.
Yeah, our first one, and we got just with doing that issue, got in contact with a woman who had another issue about wind energy, and so there's more interviews on the way, possibly. Maybe even like both of us, then like we're on the show and we like figure that out. And
I like it better when you do the interview because that means I don't have to do it.
Okay, hey,
you guys
that's fine.
need like an RV or something.
Yeah, like
go do mobile interviews.
Just
I'm
roll
sure
up in a
everybody
van.
that was thinking they might want to do an interview with us just turned off. They were like, "Yeah, these assholes are going to roll up to my house in an RV."
Like, nah,
I'm
never
out.
mind.
I'm gonna set up a crowdfunding page for you guys.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
Your stretch goal is gonna be some naked chick on a polar bear with a flail painted on the side.
What is that from? Is that from or what's that? What was that one? Was that a Supernatural episode where the guy had the van? We had the van with like the naked chick on it or whatever. Or,
I don't think she was. I think,
or she was damn near naked.
Barbarian.
Some great mosaic on the side of it.
I'm into it. Fuck it. Let's do it. You set it up. I'll be on board. Okay. So anyway, any other follow up? Were we going to do any of that soccer follow up stuff, or are we?
No. We'll wait till we do a
Okay.
sports one.
All right.
So that's
Cool.
coming up.
All right, well, then I guess let's just dive right in here. I am going to hand this off to you so people can hear you more clearly. And I'll just be off to the side
Those
here.
poor people.
These poor people. Yeah.
All right, so let's go, Brad. What do we got?
Well, I mean, we kind of talked. We did the Nintendo episode here a few weeks back. It's been about a month. Yeah. And
this is like my trilogy, right? This is
Yeah.
my third time here.
Yeah, this is going to be the disappointing third one.
Oh man.
Let's think. What are some good? Well, you know what? Let's see. What would this be? If this is going to be a good end of the trilogy, what movie is it going to be?
Last Crusade.
Ooh, yeah.
That's a good one.
If it's going to be a bad one, what's it going to be?
Revenge of the Sith. But I mean, it's still
that whole thing.
The whole
was
thing
shit.
was bad.
Yeah.
So maybe Revenge of the Sith is apt.
Well, I mean, when we did that, you kind of brought up, you're like, hey, we're an Oklahoma podcast. You want to talk about any of the Aubrey McClendon stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to, that's not going to be the entire focus of this episode, but it's going to be a decent chunk of it, I would say.
Yeah.
What I found kind of interesting was just how it was covered, and some of that had to, do with the fact, well, he had just died. So there was this kind of factor where, like, hey, let's not just bash the guy because, he was literally just in a fireball 12 hours ago. And I totally understand that. But at the same time, it's like we talk about this guy and we don't really talk about any other side of him.
Well, let me ask you this. before you kind of
Go
talk
ahead,
about
yeah.
some of the other sides of him, because you are way more up on the news than I am. I'm pitiful about it. I don't follow the news nearly as much as I should. But once all that stuff happened with I'm mischaracterizing it probably, but the collusive
With the indictment.
practices that were alleged that he was basically price fixing the oil leases.
Bid rigging, yeah.
Bid rigging. Once that kind of came down and he resigned or kind of was thrown out into the wind from Chesapeake, I think he resigned, right, at the board's kind of insistence.
Yeah, he was forced out. That's something I kind of want to talk about. Like, he was forced out. You had mentioned American Energy Partners. That was actually the correct name, so kudos to you, like, when you were talking about that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what he was doing...
Good, I'd rather be lucky than good.
Yeah, what he was doing, it was like... Basically, he had gotten Chesapeake into so many debt-laden positions, like, that then he was... I think he went off and formed his own hedge fund. I don't know if that's the correct term you want to call it, hedge fund, or... I guess that's probably the best term to call it.
Well, what was he doing?
He was then taking... Which was American Energy Partners. That was a privately owned, like he spun that off. That was his own thing.
Right.
He was then using money from Chesapeake to bankroll it. And that's what investors got really upset about. They're like,
that wouldn't be a hedge fund, though. I mean,
that
wouldn't be a hedge fund.
That's what I'm, I don't know if hedge fund is
Was he like a consulting group? Like, was it like, or was he actually managing a fund? Like a
Because what I thought he was doing was he was basically doing the same thing that he had been doing before, kind of going back to how he got his start
with Chesapeake.
Getting back into oil and gas leases and and purchases.
Which Chesapeake's a publicly owned company, so it's got stocks and this wasn't.
Held. Okay. Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of what it seems like. Is like he had done all his work with Chesapeake, he'd gotten it to be. Like I think it was like the second biggest natural gas producer in the country, only to Exxon. Huh. So it was really big. He became a billionaire through
this was Chesapeake?
Yeah.
I didn't realize Chesapeake was that big of. I mean, I knew they were.
That's what we're here to talk about, man.
Okay, cool. I didn't realize that they were like second to.
Yeah. I honestly didn't either. I was like, wow. I mean, I knew they were pretty big.
Arena.
Do what?
Fuck you. I know they got an arena, asshole.
But he got him to that level, and he built himself up to that level, and. I guess this was kind of, even though like recently the price of oil has come down. Well, before that, the price of natural gas has been really low.
Yeah, what's the price? What is it? $37 a barrel or something? $37.50 or something like that.
I don't know right now, but yeah, it's pretty. I mean,
it's way down from what it was. Like what? Hell, year and a half.
2 years ago, yeah. I mean, a year ago. Either one. Pick your
plus.
date. That's the point. Yeah,
like points been like 120.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah. I remember when it
147 was the highest.
Oh, really?
In 2007.
I remember when it hit 110 and people were like wigging the fuck out. I remember when it hit 100 and people were like, "Whoa, $100 a barrel," and it's only going north. And when it hit 110, people were like, "It's
gonna keep going up." I think the current prediction is oil should be at about $85 a barrel, and it will slowly rise to that.
When though?
In the next few years.
What'd you say though? Few years?
Yeah, within the next few
Yeah,
years.
see, that's what's crazy. And it's like a lot of people don't really realize they want to say like, oh, by the summer or by a year from now.
No, there shouldn't. Well, from what I understand.
Yeah, but I mean that's what people
is very limited.
Like they were saying that like what I'm kind of talking about. Like they were saying that exact same thing right after that crash of oil happened, and I'm like, you're talking about like the biggest price reversal of like anything ever.
You got to give the market time to respond.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not happening. But that's what a lot of people were saying. Like people like T. Boone Pickens, and everyone looks to people like this because like, oh, they're these oil barons, and you're rolling your eyes. Why?
Well, I mean. Yeah, they're good at knowing what the price should be. They're not economists, though.
Thank you. I totally agree.
They know where value is. They can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take for the market to respond.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we talked about in the last episode, where it's like, what if it does take years, not like a next year or at the end of this year or anything like that. Like, what if it takes years for the shit to like
And
fully
hey,
start to climb.
like you brought up, or we talked about last episode, was the Tesla stuff.
Yeah.
What if Tesla takes off like a bat out of hell? Mm-hmm. I mean, hell, we said that by by 2023, if Tesla hits their goal of 500,000 units a year, 500,000 new vehicles sold every year, and everybody else retains their market share that they currently have, oil's going to hit like a 2 million barrel like shortfall, which is huge.
We're already at that right now. Like we're already producing 2 million barrels a day than we need, and that's kind of why.
But this was going to be a shortfall, like where it was going to have to be. They're going to have to draw back production. Like it was going to. It would impact how much oil could be produced feasibly to turn a profit. Mm-hmm. And that's one player. That's one player in the market.
Yeah.
So say they take off in the next 5 years and say oil takes about that or longer to try and get back to where it needs to be. I mean, you never know.
That's something that's interesting.
That could push that number back further and further.
That's something that's interesting.
I mean,
oh yeah.
Everybody's assumption. Well, I say everybody's. The current predictors are predicting this based on current conditions. So if something like that happens, that would be a change in market conditions, and then they would readjust.
Be a game changer. Yeah.
And something that's kind of weird with Tesla is like the fact that it is groundbreaking that hey, they've got this electric car. This is a little bit of follow up. They've got this electric car that can go over 200 miles on a charge. It's like within the $30,000 price range. That's all neat. But some people are concerned that it's just going to become like any other car maker. Then the whole like mystique and like the brand edge that Tesla has is that it's this high end, expensive, better car, and they're going to now just be making cars that almost everyone else is going to be making now. So.
Well, I mean,
that's debatable, because that's yet to be seen.
You take Chevrolet, just as a for instance, and they have stuff all the way down from brand new, coming off the lot, $20,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and up to what? Probably around 60.
Yeah, and that's kind of my 65? Point. Like they're putting out a car too that does almost the exact same thing Tesla does.
Well, my point is that any manufacturer can run the gamut between having an economy vehicle and a luxury vehicle, and still maintain their competitiveness.
Yeah,
I
think the debate is like that. Tesla has to make a profit on some of these things. These other car makers can make something just like Tesla, and they can take a loss on it, and they're like, well.
Because of their reserves.
Because of their reserves, and plus they're diversified and all sorts of other things.
Hey, and if it gets too bad, they'll just get bailed out again. No kidding. Hey, all honesty, could Tesla ever count on a fucking bailout?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Could GM count on another bailout? At this point, the government's invested. I mean,
it's happened more than once.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. So Tesla could go fucking tits up, dude, and it's just like, well, you guys jumped into the game, played your hand, and you're done. Chevrolet would be like, man, we've been playing this game for 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so, but one other thing too, so a guy I work with he knows a decent amount about this Tesla stuff, and I was just talking with him, and I didn't realize the whole battery thing is, it's like the whole undercarriage of the car. It spans the whole
big chunk of the vehicle.
So that whole notion of, I guess I might have been totally, I don't know if it was something that I guess it was totally wrong about the whole notion of, pulling up to a station and having a battery that you just swap out. That is not feasible with these cars. So
I don't think so. Well, I mean, it is on some vehicles. Like that is a certain.
I guess not on these Tesla cars though, because it's going to run from the hood to the trunk is the whole. It's a huge battery in size, but it's like I don't know how many.
And I wish I would have looked up how long it actually takes to charge those.
I've heard 20 to 25 minutes for a full
something
charge.
like that. It's it's not like
longer to charge my cell phone.
Well, yeah, and plus you can charge it at home.
Yeah,
like supposedly they give you an adapter to charge it at in your.
But I mean, it's also longer than you go and fill up a tank of gas too. So that's why oh god, it's longer. So
But that's what I'm saying. For people taking trips, you want to take a cross country trip in a Tesla car. How much headache is it going to be? Like every 4 hours we've got to stop for half an hour to charge. But I mean, I guess you kind of maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing in the long run.
Well, and you got to think a lot of too. The market is for urban areas. A lot of people aren't driving.
Yeah.
across country.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
I mean, they're gonna get to
during
those
holiday
people.
seasons, a lot of economy is driven by people going on vacation.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, if the Griswolds are driving, trying to get to Wally World and they're driving a Tesla, how many capers can they get into?
Well, I guess while they're doing all their capers, they can be charging.
I guess so. Yeah, have their car hooked up. But that's just one more thing to go wrong.
But
yeah.
I mean, if someone's gonna go buy a new Tesla, absent depending on how low the price gets, they're going to go on a trip. They'll probably go rent a car for it,
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, if they ever want to be, like, one of the main, like, if you want to have a car that's like that hits all of those requirements to be, like, your family vehicle or whatever, one of them would be the ability to travel long distances, like, you know, to take a trip in your car.
Maybe like 300 miles.
Well, yeah, or just something to where they can get this charge time down, which, again, 25 minutes that's not bad.
Yeah.
For what you're getting out of it. I'm not trying to say, like, that's a deal breaker. I'm just saying for some people it might be.
Yeah.
Because you can fill up a tank of gas in 5 minutes and be on your way. If you've got to hang around, and plus I don't know how many times you guys have rolled through Albuquerque, New Mexico at 3 a.m, but when you stop at the gas station there, you're just looking to get the fuck back on the highway. At least that's me every time I've taken that trip, which has been a handful of times.
I'll echo that thought, except it'll be Mississippi.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude.
There's places where you just want to get the fuck back on the highway.
Dude, I was a kid going through Mississippi, and I was like, this ain't right.
Yeah, no.
Man, I don't know about this shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mississippi, but
fuck them, dude.
Yeah, fuck
go to Mississippi, man.
I don't think they actually have the capacity to listen to anything you're putting out yet. Anyway, so I think you're safe.
Shots fired. Oh, shit.
Well, anyway, back to Aubrey McClendon. Like,
well, let me ask you the question
go ahead.
that I had in my head when we kind of started this. Well, okay. Remind me to come back and tell you something about the vehicles.
I'm totally gonna forget
All
it.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
What vehicles? Tesla vehicles?
Yeah. Remember a couple of years ago you were thinking about getting like a...
Oh, that one car, like the...
what's it called?
I don't fucking know.
It looks like a banana with wheels.
was it an Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, or what was this?
Oh, shit. That's not what it was. It was a three-wheeled vehicle. It had 3 wheels.
Oh, okay.
It was encapsulated, right?
Yes.
And it looks like a banana.
It's not a banana at all.
It starts with like an E or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Elio.
about. No, it's maybe. Was it?
ELIO, maybe?
I'll
Anyway,
look it up. What's your point about it?
I was driving down the road the other day and I saw someone in one.
What'd you think?
Fucking banana on wheels.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted some fruit salad.
Wow.
Anyway, what was your question?
So my question about Aubrey McClendon was, keeping in mind that I just don't follow the news as much as I should.
Stop. It doesn't. Does that look like a fucking banana? It is Elio Motors. ELIO.
Yeah, it
Does
looks.
that look like a banana?
With wheels on the side.
If you painted that yellow, I might say yes.
Fuck off, dude. It doesn't look like a banana.
Anyway, so
It kind of looks like a banana from the
you're talking about how people were being kind of not too harsh of a critic because he had just died. Right?
Yeah.
But for what he was kind of accused of and what had kind of gone on, I don't think he had really ever gotten just hammered by the media to the extent that I think he could have been. I think
why is that the case? Because just doing a little bit of research for kind of like talking about him and stuff. And this goes to, we talked about this with the Thunder, which we're going to talk with you more later. There's like Oklahoma is in its own little bubble, and there's an aspect of like, hey, there's a pride taken in that sometimes where we're like, only we're Oklahoma, fuck you. We totally don't need to listen to you, Eastern Seaboard people. I totally understand that. That's not what I'm talking about though, is the lack of awareness sometimes, or how some people put it, you just bury shit. And especially with dealing with Aubrey McClendon, like, I looked up stuff, and there was a lot of stuff out there about him and his practices, but none of it was from here.
None of it was from here.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's kind of what we're going to talk about. But continue your question.
My guess is, there's a couple of things. First, he made a lot of money for a lot of people in the state.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. And that's why a lot of people are like, oh, he was a great guy. He's developed so many things here. Like you said, put a lot of money into things. Here's my question. Like, talking about he had these practices of getting companies into a huge amount of debt. This is what I thought when the price of oil was still high. You know, like Drew, your dad would be kind of talking about, like, you know, and I don't mean to dog on him, but like he was just like from an outside perspective, he had this opinion of like, well, we see maybe like a news article or just news about like, hey, we found more oil, we found more gas. Hey, that's great. Let's just drill it up, and we're all our problems are solved. And I was like, well, you know, what's crazy is like these companies have taken on a huge amount of debt. If the price ever falls, then they suddenly become fucked because they need the price to be a certain amount to maintain their business. And like, I think we've talked about, well, I don't know which episode did we talk? It was like, I think the earthquake one where we're like, Sandridge may be going bankrupt, and they're like, you were like, what? And now they're thinking about it. They're thinking about it. Yeah.
They publicly
and that was the other company that was with the charges with Aubrey McClendon. It was Chesapeake and Sandridge.
And in the meantime, Williams Energy is about to leave the state.
Chaparral, I think, is going bankrupt.
Okay, yeah. So
there's all sorts of different, you know, some you've never heard of.
You have energy companies like getting the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, or filing bankruptcy and stuff. You know, whatever. Something with that Chesapeake though is like they got immunity in that indictment case because they were cooperating.
Yeah,
which I told you earlier.
Just that fact alone, I didn't even really know. Just looking it up, I
guess I'm not surprised, but maybe I'm off base with this sentiment. If you or I don't cooperate, it's called obstruction. If they don't cooperate, they get immunity to cooperate. Like, well, let's sweeten the pot then. If you cooperate, we'll give you this.
Yeah,
it's just, man.
Well, to an extent. I mean, if you don't cooperate, if you're complicit in it, then it's not necessarily obstruction. It's your right against self-incrimination.
Well, sure, but I'm saying like if you know, I mean, yeah, but that's to give a whole like the whole fucking corporate body gets immunity essentially. Is just those are legal. Those are legal. I guess let's say legal luxuries that I don't think we could ever hope to experience.
Well, when you say Chesapeake avoided any illegal repercussions, you're really talking about the board of directors and
yes,
the personnel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not talking about the corporate entity itself.
I think both, because they were also. I mean,
then
like,
I guess my confusion would be that, I mean, you don't really charge a company with a crime.
I think what the company was worried about was whether they were going to get fined.
Okay,
on
so civil liability.
Some kind of level.
Of like the ability to be fined.
Yeah, which just looking up stuff for this, it was
okay. So what we're probably talking about then, it would probably be some kind of immunity from the Corporation Commission.
Yeah.
So then my question is, here's the big question to me: who the fuck are they going after? Who's getting?
Kind of the point since he died.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, okay. So,
I don't think anybody now. This is kind of something you alluded to last time. Like, well, with him gone.
No, that's what I said. Everybody gets to walk, right?
Yeah, everyone gets to walk.
Everybody's got deals. He's dead. Everybody's got immunity and deals. It just goes away.
Yeah.
It's like dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
Well, somebody didn't, but
but yeah, the company, all the people that are still left around, are like, oh man, we don't even have to look bad. We just got away with everything. Like we may look bad to the public, but amongst like the other players in this game, we didn't sell anybody out. We didn't snitch on anybody. We just
no more charges.
It never went to court.
Yeah.
It's over.
So Chesapeake, I guess, avoided civil money penalties.
Yeah, from here anyway, right. On that whole thing.
From like the Oklahoma Corporation Commission,
I guess, or anything federally, maybe whatever. I don't know. Okay. Like I just looking the stuff up, I did see that like they had. There's just stuff I didn't even know about. There's, what was it? It was, settlements on racketeering, fraud, and antitrust charges just in Michigan. People in Pennsylvania fucking hate these people. Chesapeake and Aubrey McClendon.
Wow.
Oh yeah, because I mean, like, you got to think like, I think I've never watched it myself, but there's that documentary Gasland. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
I've never watched it either, but it's kind of about where the people are turning on their faucet and they can light the water on fire and they talk about fracking.
Oh, yeah.
And that whole bit. Like they just, I mean, like I said, the people just don't like it, and it's just interesting to read stuff from that area because they won't sugarcoat it like people from here. They talked about like, you know, McClendon wrote like $500,000 worth of checks just to the Tom Corbett, who was, I think at the time, an attorney general candidate, and then he ended up becoming the governor for a while, and that Pennsylvania ended up being like a big state for fracking and things like that because it had never had, you know, it's not like Oklahoma. They don't have a lot of oil and gas business there, but they do now. And that's what everyone kind of like, you know, talks about Aubrey McClendon and like, oh, he was a risk taker. And he, you know, talking about like the great things he's done. You know, he did all that stuff and it did a lot of good. And that's kind of my question. Like, is it really good? Because, you know,
well, they're conflating the idea of good with making a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah, and that's my point too. Like now, some aren't making even a lot of money. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, he brought so many jobs here. Well, what if those jobs disappear now because of some of the practices he used in a company
about it several times how tied up with big oil our state is. If big oil goes
and
under,
like if it goes to shit,
you can almost say our state goes hand in hand with big oil.
Yeah, it's like if it goes to shit, can we go, oh, gee, man, thanks, Aubrey McClendon? You know, I'm like, it doesn't really play with the same idea of like, well, he, like you said, he's brought a lot of money, a lot of jobs, development.
There's a minute amount of insulation in the state in that if the price of oil goes up, yeah, we typically do better than the rest of the country because we are so oil dependent. But when the price of oil goes down, everyone else in the country ends up spending more money, going on more trips, doing more things because gas is cheaper.
Yeah, and they love it.
Yeah, and there is a tangential effect in that, in general, GDP, it goes, you know, depending on how low oil goes, can potentially go up if it just kind of comes down some, and it doesn't go to those breakneck prices at $120 a barrel.
That's something that's interesting. Just kind of, I remember looking at this a couple weeks ago, and it was an article from about 2 years ago from the News OK. And this was before it really got bad as far as the price slide. It was talking about even when times were good with the oil price, only 46% of the revenue from the state actually went into the general revenue fund. Everything else was tax credits, or maybe they had like a special project already for something. And you know, after so many write-offs, 46% was going into a fund, like, you know, with now with the budget problems, like, well, now they're trying to cut stuff. So it's like, how much percent of it is going in, I guess, when the price of oil is bad, like it is now? I mean, that's less than half.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, did we actually get any of that benefit from a lot of all that money? I mean, like, we did in a certain way, but I'm like, did the state to a certain extent? Like,
yeah, and you know,
if we had all that money, and if we had all that money from, like, you know, the lottery, you know, and all those different things that, you know, we would have these people educated to the moon and fucking back. Yeah. You know, we'd have a space station.
Be contemplating laying off 208 teachers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the lottery was supposed to save education.
Well,
that's his own episode right there. Yeah. It's the lottery.
The shitty.
So I'm fine with the lottery.
The piece of
but
shit
only like 30% of it goes to actually.
Yeah, I think we were sold a bill of goods on the lottery.
Well, well, here's the problem. Yeah, okay, that portion goes to education, but all they do is take away other sources of income to education.
Yeah.
Money
You're
that's
exactly
not
right.
guaranteed and earmarked for education.
But they don't sell that. They're like, hey, we gave X amount of dollars to schools.
Oh, there's
billboard with kids. Oh, we're all feeling warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah. Oh, this provides an extra, you know, $5 million. Cool. Now we can take $5 million away that we were providing from some other source.
Yeah.
Dude, I've always thought the biggest sap vote is to always tie some sort of change or increase in tax or something. Tie it to a school or some sort of school project you want to build, and people will vote for it. And they just not realizing, and I've been in this on the unfortunate side of this, to go to like the lottery. I have no problem with the lottery. I think if you want to, you know, spend your money on lotto tickets, you should be allowed to. But I really thought voting yes on the lottery was, man, look at all this money that's going to go to schools.
Well, that's why Georgia was able to do. I don't know that they're still doing it. But for years, Georgia had that program where if you graduated high school with a B average, you could go to any state school in Georgia for, I think, pretty much free. There were maybe like
big
nominal
discount.
fees. Yeah, but I mean, you were eligible to go to any state school in Georgia that you could, get into, and the state would foot the bill. And that's how they did it, was by the lottery.
And that's kind of what I'm like questioning with this whole Aubrey McClendon stuff. Like, we like, oh God, his practices, it was just amazing, and he was an amazing person. I'm like, is that really that great? Like Chesapeake just had so many, I talked about the stuff in Michigan. They set up its own fund just to take care of that shit. $25 million, like, just for shit that, is obviously going to come up with fines and lawsuits, and which, I mean, that's obviously something a company does with lawsuits anyway. But they were like getting in so much goddamn trouble that they're like, hey, we need to set aside so much money just for the bullshit we're getting into.
Well,
I mean, there is
a distinction that I think is relevant in that what the fallout between risky practices in terms of what the risk to consumer health would be versus bid rigging, price fixing.
Yeah.
When you're talking about taking dollars out of someone's pocket versus taking years off their life. I mean, there is a distinction in that. And
I think that's why they were getting fined, is like they had, some shit had blown up and they'd like contaminated so many rivers or something, from a well or a holding area of natural gas or whatever.
And not just that, but with the way that the whole oil and gas leases, with the way, how many steps are required to do anything with that, with the corporation commission hearings and pooling and
permits,
division
and
orders,
stuff,
and just the individual leases to consumers. I mean, the amount of steps required, I would be surprised if they're able to. I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised, but to be able to pinpoint an aspect of liability that is actionable, because I don't know how far back it goes. I mean, hell, it might. I mean, statute of limitations will probably run on a lot of it anyway.
That was something that was brought up, like with the indictment on Aubrey McClendon, was like, oh, well, this is something that hadn't happened in 100 years.
Yeah, the Sherman Antitrust Act.
Yeah.
He was charged with the violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act.
Yeah.
Yeah, like nobody's ever been charged with it since basically its inception or something like that.
Yeah, and then I'm like, I don't know a whole lot about that.
I don't either.
But I'm like, I don't know if that's a great argument as far as like, well, he should never be charged with it. I don't know. But that's, I mean, in a way, that's not kind of not what we're talking about. Because, I mean, honestly, it never got hashed out because he died.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's not going to get hashed out either.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just done. It's done.
And that's something else. Like so he dies, and we don't want to talk about him because he had just died. And that's totally fine. Like, hey, respect for the family and everything. But then we waited, and about a month later, the investigation report from, I guess it was Oklahoma City Police.
Yeah,
I guess it's whoever did the investigation. They found that he did. He was driving at a high rate of speed, and he had tapped the brakes. But they also said that he wasn't actually slowing the vehicle down. It was just like literally tap literally.
Yeah, he was probably making sure he was still on target.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, I mean, well, he hit the wall at around 78, and I think he was traveling at 88 before that. So the only reason they say he may have slowed down is because he went off the road and went off to some softer ground right before he hit the wall. This is what I take issue with. The Oklahoman reports, okay, hey everybody, he tapped the brakes. Aubrey McClendon taps brakes before he died. He tapped the brakes. I read a story that's not from Oklahoma here, and it's from the Oklahoma City Police report, and it's from and this is what it says. It's that he had the accelerator depressed over 90% a second before he hit that wall. That is not in anything locally.
Yeah.
That's completely omitted. It's not even, I guess how they got around it editorially, if you want to say this, is the fact that they said, well, in the article, not in the headline. The headline was, he tapped the brakes, everybody. In the article, it just says, well, he made no attempt to slow the vehicle down. I guess that means I've got the pedal to the fucking metal right before I hit the wall. I guess that's what that means. And that's what I take issue with. It's and not that I need to know that Aubrey McClendon was obviously committing suicide. I'm just then
it
taking
makes you question journalistic integrity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like
if that's
Jesus.
how they're framing that particular story.
Yeah.
What are they framing?
What are they doing on anything? We've talked about that with just fucking sports, the Thunder, like how we don't want to talk about any of that type of stuff. And it goes to any type of issue. I mean, not to say that, there's no journalism in here in the state and that like nobody hashes up anything.
I don't know. Part of me, I've got two points to this. One,
Okay.
Aubrey McClendon is kind of he's his own unique little area because he did have a relationship with Clay Bennett, and Clay Bennett has married into the Gaylord family. And while I think the Gaylord family is not still the sole controlling,
No, they're not. I think in our soccer episode we talked about it's like Philip and such. I might be butchering that name, but he bought.
Yeah.
He now owns the media company that then owns the Oklahoman.
I think.
Previously it was the
would be
Gaylords.
silly to think that they don't exercise any influence at all. Still, I mean, the Gaylords. I think they're still very influential over. I mean, I'm assuming they still have contacts and friends and people that are not wanting to make them mad up there.
I can tell you one thing: they still have a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Which good on them.
yeah,
but it's
fine.
And I'm
That's
not
fine.
suggesting that they're going out and they're saying we need to put a kibosh on this story right now. He tapped the brakes. That's not what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I'm just I could see how not wanting to go to fall in their bad graces would make someone want to maybe make the story sound a little better to them, and so that they didn't piss them off.
Yeah.
So that's the first part to it, and that's all speculation. Who knows? But the second part is I think there's a cultural aspect at play. I mean, Oklahoma is I love Oklahoma. I've been here for damn ever, pretty much.
Yeah.
But
Born and raised.
But we are really, really bad at being homers. We are horrible about it. Anytime the media has criticized someone that has done something good for Oklahoma or is perceived to be the good guy, no. I mean, the sky will fall on
Yeah,
them.
and that's why I kind of bring up, I totally get the, especially the rest of the country and Oklahoma, the us versus them aspect of I take pride in Oklahoma.
They consider us just fucking flyover country and all.
Yeah,
that
all sorts of different things. Or hey, maybe Oklahoma just knows better. Whatever. That I think is a separate issue from what you're talking about.
And I think it is a separate issue. I mean, it makes me wonder if if it's a knee-jerk response, Oklahoman's knee-jerk response to just the bitchy gossip columny, desperate housewives culture that you see, or it's because we don't want to be rude.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different things that kind of go into the reason why
I think like that last point, like me from being from a small town, that is what it reminds me of how the whole state reacts to certain stories.
Yeah.
It's that
that's rude.
Yeah, or we don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
Or we don't want to paint a bad light on this type of things, guys. Just nothing to see here. And that's kind of what we talked about with that Thunder article. Like, we don't want to paint anything in a bad light.
Which Thunder article?
It was basically a Grantland piece from Brian Curtis that was talking about how
it was called Distant Thunder.
Distant Thunder, and it was about how
distant.
It's about how like anybody locally here in the actual media, as far as reporter stuff, they never get actual access to.
Well, you remember when Barry Trammell did his piece on Kevin Durant? Was it Mr. Unreliable?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I
mean,
mean,
everybody wigged the fuck out.
Yeah. You're going to make Kevin Durant... This guy is a pro basketball player. He's got more on his mind than some fucking article that Barry Trammell writes.
But that kind of plays into the point, like, man, we think it's everything.
If he thinks...
Oh my God.
If he thinks that he is really going to... no. Nope. Mr. Unreliable? Really? No, I'm signing now. Get me out of here.
I'm going to New York.
Yeah, done.
They're going to be nice to me there.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Nobody was calling Kevin Durant out in that article or anything like that. It was purely a professional critique. I don't think anybody would argue, of all the pro sports players, honestly, Kevin Durant is probably one of my favorite in terms of his at least his perceived ethics.
Yeah.
Because he seems like a genuinely nice person.
Yeah.
I mean, he donated, $1 million of his own money to the tornado relief. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah.
He seems like a good person.
Yeah, and you get down there, he was down there walking around and
But he gets paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
To be a public figure playing a game that a lot of people enjoy. And that puts him in a position where a newspaper is kind of obligated to have to critique that. I mean,
you would think.
You have to.
Yeah.
It would be bad reporting if he didn't. And it would be perpetuating the same shit that we're talking about right now. I mean...
Yeah, and I mean, what was crazy, and we mentioned this, I think, in one of our last episodes. Oh, I think it was in our follow-up where we went like half an hour in our follow-up. Basically half an episode. And, no one here has access to any of those players on a one-on-one basis. And they get a lot of clips and quotes and things from like when they get to crowd him up at a press conference, or like he was had his charity foundation. He was walking by the red carpet, and everyone has their microphone or recorder out, and they're trying to get a clip. Hey, good. That's how they get information. Well, he had this interview with Bloomberg days before that, and it's actually a one-on-one with somebody, and it's completely out of state, of course. And he gets to talking about things that you never would have heard here. Basically, like, they asked him about Aubrey McClendon, and you could kind of tell, like, he was like, yeah, he's a great guy. He had a couple, like, just very generic answers.
Canned responses.
But canned responses. That's a good way of putting it. But then past that, he's like, he almost didn't even know really what to say about any of it, because I guarantee you here, he'd never been even touched on that subject.
Yeah.
He at least got asked it from someone from Bloomberg. But it's just that's kind of my point. Like, that's something else to talk about with Aubrey McClendon. Is like he was a 20% stake owner in the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean at the time he was the big money bags.
Yeah, I mean he was the one that kind of got the team here, right? I mean, I know Clay Bennett.
Clay Bennett was more the driving force.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, he had a big
with Stern.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he's buddy with David Stern. Yeah.
And Aubrey McClendon was buddy with Clay Bennett, but Aubrey McClendon was the one that had all the money at the time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he bankrolled a lot of it, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Other than, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. Just from like him dying and his tie-in with all these kind of like, I don't know, shady dealings. He got indicted. Like, how does that play into the team? I don't fucking know. I really don't even know what to say about it, because you know what, just from my like looking at this story and how he was covered himself, how would any news organization here in the state talk about that? Like his dealings with the Thunder, how it affects them.
Well, I don't think it does.
And it might not. That's my whole point. But I'm like, I don't even know.
Had it gone farther, had he actually been convicted, and
they did some more investigating and things like that.
Not just investigating, but if he had been exposed to some civil liability and his assets were subject to forfeiture, then yeah, I could see that being a huge problem. But if it's since it stopped where it did, I don't think it's going to be a problem at all. I mean,
we'll just kind of forget about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure his family will inherit. And, they'll either have some voting rights, or depending on,
they'll sell it off or whatever.
Yeah. Or,
yeah, maybe.
Or they'll have a right to so they'll have some kind of rights in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's I'm not sure what the structure is. I know it was like the name of the company that they formed was the Professional Basketball something LLC. That's what that was the ownership group that went and bought Supersonics, and then I think they put it in trust, and so now there's a board of trustees that runs it. And so I'm assuming that the terms of the trust would dictate who's to take once he passes.
Yeah, who's to say?
Yeah,
and it's kind of up in the air anyway.
So
it's just crazy. Like
effect.
It's just I don't even, like I said, I don't even know what to say with that. Like, if like your point you said earlier, like if they'll report Aubrey McClendon like that, like what else will they report?
Or what else
or
won't they
report?
Yeah.
And that's I think that's
it's
with any newspaper.
It goes back and forth. I mean, pretty much nobody's free of blame here.
Yeah.
Consumers have a lot of the blame.
Oh,
because
yeah, of
we
course.
let them get away with it. Okay, they have a lot of the blame because they're doing it, and then individual groups like the Thunder, they have a lot of the blame too because they're perpetuating that whole approach. Because they're limiting the newspaper's access.
Yeah.
And they also, as soon as the Barry Trammell wrote that article, for instance, I'm using that as my focal point.
No, that's okay.
As soon as he wrote that article, I mean, they were all lighting him up too. I mean, that was probably the low point of his career, I'm sure. I mean, he just got it.
How many brownie points did he just lose with the Thunder?
Yeah.
And some would be like, well, fucking rightly so. How dare you call Kevin Durant Mr. Unreliable? But I'm like
which
like
I think after the fact, the stuff I heard from him is he took the criticism, I think, pretty well, and he said that his only regret was he said I think maybe I should have picked a better headline. He goes because the story isn't really. It's not the story. The story that follows that headline isn't really representative of the headline. It's kind of he says a poor choice of words for the headline.
Well, I could have sworn, maybe I'm misremembering this. I could have sworn he didn't even pick that headline.
That could be.
I think it was like the editor
picked the headline.
Which is usually a lot of
I think you may be right.
The case a lot of the time because they're trying to grab.
Yeah, they're
trying to grab views, just like we're trying to grab views. And anybody is in that area. Like, and that's that's nothing special to the Oklahoman.
No.
Or any news organization, whether they're KOCO5 or anything, where they're trying to grab advertisement.
Yeah.
Basically, some call it clickbait.
Journalistic clickbait is basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
and like there is a difference between that kind of clickbait and the kind of clickbait I see online from a lot of these news organizations that. Hey, there was a funny video of a cat online, everybody, that everyone already knows about, but hey, we posted it, so click on our link and we get, and that's, I'm like, Jesus Christ,
Have you guys thought about just like picking a product and advertising for it for a while and then going and saying, hey, we've done a really good job at advertising your product, guys. You should think about starting a relationship with us here.
Listen to our Black Knight, Planet 9 episode. Yeah. I tried to shill for Pepsi and they haven't called us yet.
Yeah. And we're still waiting on that call.
No, we haven't called them.
You got to do it every time for a while. Establish like a pattern. Show that you're good at it.
Drink Pepsi.
Yeah, exactly. And then,
and buy Usher albums.
Yeah,
there you go.
Oh, yeah.
That was in that commercial or whatever.
You got to listen to that episode. That Pepsi did. Tell me this. Pepsi did some. You ever heard of the Black Knight? It's a satellite, like this ancient satellite.
I've heard it from you telling me about it.
Okay, never mind.
The myth is perpetuating itself.
This thing in November of last year where it was like it had the Black Knight and an Usher song. They didn't really advertise Pepsi, but it was a Pepsi production.
Well, it wasn't Black Knight with Martin Lawrence, was it?
No.
It was a different Black Knight.
It was a different Black Knight.
Okay.
But yeah, so anyway,
And that could be its own episode itself, just talking about like
the Martin Lawrence movie, Black Knight.
No, but like media and like we've talked about it a little bit before, like how
Mark Twain ripoff, right? Yeah. Boston Celtic in King Arthur's Court.
Yeah, but just how like media uses that type of practice, how it's changed, I guess, over the years. I'm like we've talked about it before already, so I mean, like, maybe it's not its own episode, but. Depending on the subject, just seeing how it's covered, we could probably talk about it whenever it comes up. Like this Aubrey McClendon thing.
Which
that was just some of the easiest stuff, because like you could see like, wow, we literally just crossed a line through this fact and just left it out.
I'll say this.
Sorry, everyone.
I'll say this, and this is just. It seemed to me that once the new ownership group came and bought the ownership interest away from the Gaylords, it seemed like reporting got a little better.
Yeah, I would actually have to agree with you.
And we were talking about this before the podcast. I remember in high school, I mean, the Daily Oklahoman just had a horrible reputation. I mean, I don't remember anybody saying, "Oh, that's a good paper." I mean, it was just a commonly accepted fact that, no, it's a crap paper.
I think the same held true for the Norman transcript as well, though.
Yeah, the Norman misprint.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the Norman misprint and the Daily Disappointment. That was what everybody called it. And nobody had anything nice to say about him at all.
Yeah.
I at least not to me. I mean, and maybe, it's just groupthink or whatever, but everybody I talked to about it, nobody had anything good to say.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much, I think we can probably wrap up.
Well, were you guys wanting to talk about the Thundergate and all that, or?
Well, I think we're about to talk.
So we're going to talk about, okay.
Yeah, we've got about an hour, so we'll probably wrap this episode up. Like, we mainly just wanted to talk about I know we mentioned Aubrey McClendon a lot, but just how certain things are covered here. And we've mentioned it before. It's not the first episode we've ever complained about, hey, the Oklahoman didn't cover something the way I wanted it to. I also don't want to say like, oh, there's zero journalism going on, because there is some.
Let me say one. I will add one thing just to kind of take a little bit of a counter stance.
Okay.
It's that in general, I mean, Oklahomans don't think about things the same way that New Yorkers think about things, the same way that Californians think about things.
Exactly. Of course not.
There are regional differences in the way people think about things. And, the news here is covered by Oklahomans. And so, giving a benefit of the doubt, obviously, I don't think people are trying to necessarily cover things up. I can see.
Yeah, like actively, hey, let's hush this up.
I can.
You're selling, kind of like you were saying earlier. You're selling a product to people who like that. This is what they want.
Exactly. So I can see them thinking this is the Oklahoma spin on the news. We're reporting the news Oklahoma style, which is a little nicer than maybe it should be.
And I think that's the point of this whole episode right there. We're a little nicer sometimes.
On the same side of the coin, or the other side of the coin, you could say that maybe in New York they report the news a little meaner than they should.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean,
yeah.
I'm kind of with you in saying, like, let's not act like Oklahoma's some weird case where, like,
No, of course not.
Because
no.
I think
you're right.
Every state's got like their own whatever. What do you want to call it? Their own
representation. How they paint things in a certain light.
Differences and stuff like that. Where the way we report things, we do this the Floridian way. We do this the whatever.
And in Mississippi, they just don't do it at all, I guess.
You stole it from me. I was getting ready to jump in on Mississippi. I was waiting for that moment.
Like dropping elbows on Mississippi.
I know.
Poor Mississippi.
But I guess it's the point. Like I said, the point is just to kind of bring this to light. I mean, I know this isn't like a, especially like you were saying. I mean, it's been a running joke for a while. Obviously, like with the Oklahoma stuff. I'm not from the metro area, so I've never heard that. So it's kind of interesting to me. But my small town local paper is kind of the same way. I was like, well, hell, they would never piss anybody off. It's like that problem amplified by a million, because it's such a small town. Like, oh God, we run into that guy like literally every day. We would never want to piss him off.
Your Google Fiber is actually going to be going to Mississippi.
Why?
They all thought they were going to be getting new clothes.
Wow. Just kick them while they're down.
I think we're done here. This is
what was
done.
it about Oklahomans being nice? A little too nice?
Yeah,
I said
damn.
I've been here a long time.
That is something that's interesting. We're talking about like how we paint things in a certain light. It was like, how there's like that there's like polls they put up on like Sports Nation, and they ask like certain questions as far as like, like, hey, do you think who should win like the MVP in basketball and things like that, and it'll break it down by state. Oklahoma is like consistently the one outlier, just like, no, fuck you. Yeah, even if it's like a question where you could tell other regions were like, you know what, this is probably the case, and they go with the general consensus. Oklahoma's still that one like other color. Nope. Like one of the questions was, do you think Seattle can support an NBA team? The rest of the country, yes, in red. One blue state, Oklahoma, no, fuck you. And it was just like that on any question. It didn't even have to do with. That's a little personal to us. The whole. Yeah. Sonics.
Well, I think
it didn't even have to be
proven that they can't.
It didn't even have to be a personal type of question. It was just like it could be any question. We would be like, no, don't believe it. Don't think so.
The country needs that. They need
I would agree to some extent.
Who's like, I don't know if I'm right or not, but fuck the rest of you. I'm going this way.
Oklahoma, baby.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
well, so are we gonna?
That's
wrap this up. His escape velocity. Well, give me this fucking mic. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and throw our contact details out there again. UFPpodcast@gmail.com, at UFP Podcast on Twitter, and Unidentified Flying Podcast on Facebook. So, you sure we're done?
We're done.
We just hit our hour. I was worried we weren't going to hit an hour, so hey.
Hey, we're right on target this time, man.
Yeah, we're consistent.
Was this the first time?
Did we tap the brakes?
Yeah, we're tapping the brakes.
Oh, boy. Okay, well, until next time, this has been Drew, and
this is Brad.
And you've been listening to the Unidentified Flying Podcast. Light years ahead of the curve.